What's going on, everybody? Mike Samich back here with Mark Cornett of C2 Racing, your defending champions of the Florida Derby with White Abarrio. Mark, thank you very much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Glad to be back, Mike.
Now, we talked about White Abarrio before the Florida Derby last year. You mentioned how he was sitting on a big one. He absolutely delivered, and the fan base for this horse has been phenomenal to see it grow throughout the last year or so. Just a ton of notoriety for White Abarrio. A lot of people absolutely love the horse. So let's start out with him. How's he doing? What's the plan for White Abarrio right now?
Well, he's doing really good. As you know, we cut him back to 7 furlongs off the Pegasus race, and he seemed to really relish that. So basically what we're going to do is keep him one turn the rest of the year, whether it be at 7 furlongs or a 1-turn mile, which that last race when we dropped him for the allowance race, ironically, there was 19, I believe, graded stakes on that card that weekend. And he had the fastest buyer number of any horse out of any stake, including all the graded stakes, even though he ran on the allowance race. So, you know, he seemed to relish the 7 furlongs. With that being said, we're going to point him, and he's going to run the Carter Handicap on the Wood Memorial Undercard next Saturday, a week from this Saturday. He'll fly up to Aqueduct on Tuesday, up via FedEx, actually. He's going into Memphis, and then he'll go into New York from Memphis. So for those of you who didn't know it, FedEx does ship horses.
I had no idea. I mean, I know that you got the options to obviously take them in the back of a truck, right, with the different horse carriers, or to fly them. I didn't realize FedEx got into the business.
They sure do. They got to go through Memphis, and he'll switch planes. He'll be on the so-called tarmac for a couple hours waiting on his plane to go to New York, and there'll probably be 4 or 5 other horses on the plane with him doing the same thing. So
now, I have never personally shipped a horse via plane. How is that feeling during that process? Do you have any concern when the horse is going on the plane or going through it? I mean, obviously, White Abarrio was shipped before, so for him, not as much of an issue.
A lot less, because it's a big pallet, and there's actually 2 stalls on the pallet, and they load it up right behind where the pilots sit. They've got a special area there that's designated for animals and horses and things like this. And the nice part of it is the groom can ship with the horse and sit right there, go back there, check the horse, and do all that. And it's a lot easier on the horse than a 20-hour van ride vibrating. Because, you know, when they ship in a van, you know, they have to balance themselves all the time, standing up unless they're laying down. And the vibration and the balancing and I just found, you know, when we ship Blind Luck all across the country, it sure worked good with her. And that's what we're going to be doing with all our horses from this point forward, is flying them.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, you think about it. I mean, you obviously turbulence can be with fear when you're flying, but that is so much less likely than on a 20-hour ride hitting multiple bumps where you just, you know, and you have to change lanes, you're going back and forth. So you don't always think about it in that sense, but it's an excellent point there, Mark. Let's jump over to the Florida Derby, because I got to admit, I was ecstatic that we had set this up. You've got 2 horses in there that are both 30-1, but I don't think they should either probably be 30-1. You've had so much success over your career of buying horses that have raced and then properly spotting them and getting them to turn out to be better than what they were for the previous connections. You've got 2 in this one. You've got Mr. PEEKS, you've got Nautical Star, the 5 and the 6 horse, both, like I said, sitting at 30-1 here. Let's start out with Mr. PEEKS, because this one's very, very interesting to me. Mr. PEEKS coming in as a maiden, trying to win the Florida Derby, but faced Olders last year, and specifically a la carte, a horse for Belmont that I know they're very high on, 5-year-old who ran a huge race. Mr. PEEKS runs second to him. What jumped out at you about Mr. PEEKS, why you wanted to buy him, and what are you expecting from him in the Florida Derby?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, he's with Ian Wilkes. Okay, Ian Wilkes is not necessarily known. I'm not saying he's a bad trainer. He's a very good trainer. Ian Wilkes is not known for getting 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds ready to sprint on their first few races. He usually likes to be conservative, race them into shape, race them into experience, that kind of thing. So when I saw this horse, actually, his first race, he came out of the 1 hole and was very fractious behind the gate, in the gate. Plus, he came out of the 1 hole. He had to stand in there forever. I've yet to see a horse as fractious as he was run as good as he did that day. Usually, for me, I see a horse fractious in the gate. It's a complete toss. So he showed speed that day, went internally fractions that were legitimate, actually graded stakes paced fractions internally within the race. Just got tired first time out. That's all you can say. Second time out, made a much better account of himself. Of course, it was not a straight 3-year-old restricted race. It was for 3-year-olds and up, which in March of your 3-year-old reel, to me, is a little early to be running against 4 and 5-year-old horses. So Mott had a horse coming out of there, a la carte, that came out of the Todd Pletcher race with the Lakota Gold, I believe is the horse. And those two battled first time out with one of the strongest maiden races, to be honest, I've ever seen. One of the horses, Lakota, I think, got a 97 buyer out of the race, and a la carte, the horse that ran against us, got a 96, which you're not expecting that with a couple of first-time starters.
No.
Especially older horses and a 5-year-old. And I knew something was up with a Mott horse because, you know, Bill's very conservative in his own right. And if this horse wasn't showing a ton of ability, they wouldn't have waited until a 5-year-old to start this horse, okay, especially in special weight. So I knew he was going to be the real deal. My horse, Mr. PEEKS, again, he came out, broke sharp. A la carte was sitting outside of him, and keep in mind, a la carte's 1-2. He's a 5-year-old coming off a 96 buyer against a 3-year-old here, a field of 3-year-olds. So, you know, he got down on the inside, took the lead. A la carte hooked him probably at the quarter pole. We were down on the inside. This horse fought on gamely all the way to the wire. He could have given up. He did not give it up. He galloped out like a monster, if you watch the gallop out. So he just got beat by a better horse, as you know, a 5-year-old against a 3-year-old, which is very tough to do. Now, here's the interesting part. So, you know, in this business, you have to have vision. It's not as simple as looking at a daily racing form and a piece of paper. You have to understand what's going on internally within the race. Okay, so let's just imagine for a minute that a la carte wasn't in the race. Okay, let's just say he wasn't in the race. He was running against the rest of the 3-year-olds in that field. The horse probably wins by 7 or 8 lengths in a chokehold, runs probably a 90 buyer number. And I think people are saying a little bit different comments right now about him going into this race, especially the fact that he's had 2 foundation building races, sprints. My favorite thing to do is stretch a speed horse off, to turn him for the first time off of 2 sprint races. And that's what we're going to get the opportunity today or Saturday to do, and we're going to be able to get the trainer switch, more seasoning to go with everything else. So
you made a couple comments there that I absolutely love. First off, the fractions in that first race, 21-4, 45-3, racehorse time early there that Mr. PEEKS faced. And I also loved how he fought against a la carte. He didn't just fold it up after a la carte was able to get him down the lane. I'm excited to see what he can do. So with Mr. PEEKS, what's the plan here? I mean, I love the 2 sprints to a route angle as well. A lot of times you see those horses be more forwardly placed.
Right.
Are you looking to try and get the lead with Mr. PEEKS? See if you can take him gauge wide?
Not necessarily. I mean, we're not going to take away his natural speed, okay? So over at Palmetto's in his last breeze, you'll see he had the second best work of the day. Over at Palmetto's going 5/8. He worked against a horse called O'Connor, who's a very highly regarded horse in Daffy's barn, okay? He's come over here, his first 2 races, he ran a 99 and 100 buyer, and he's a 5-year-old. And the reason that we put him with that horse is for 2 things. One, he's probably the best gallop out horse at Gulfstream Park, okay? So after his work, he's probably the best gallop out around the turn after his work. So we wanted to see, and I wanted in particular to see, okay, after the work, can this horse hang with O'Connor on the gallop out? Because if he can hang with O'Connor, I believe he can go 2 turns. So he sat in the work when they breached 5/8. He sat 2 lengths behind O'Connor down the backside, hit the 5/8 pole, just stayed there nice and relaxed, sitting off the horse, and then they finished heads up, and then O'Connor out-galloped him around the backside by about a length and a half. But our horse was not under any extra encouragement to stay up with him. That was the key thing. So to your question, we're going to break sharp. If we're on the lead, we're on the lead. I got a feeling Saez in the 4, after what happened in the last race, is going to be trying to go to the lead. If he takes a step, breaks a step slow, we can get over in front of him. We're in the lead, so be it. If not, we're very happy to sit right off his hip. in a similar fashion, actually, to what White Abarrio did in the Holy Bull when he set right off the hip of the one.
Yeah, the Four Mage tough break last time in the was that the Fountain of Youth. Hit the gate, hopped at the start, was supposed to be the pace, ended up not being the pace, and ran pretty well considering everything that happened there. So I kind of agree with you. I think it's between the 4 and the 5 Mage and your horse, Mr. Peeks, to see who is going to be able to get the lead on Saturday. I love hearing that he sat 2 lengths back behind O'Connor, and that was just kind of that setup to make sure that there's the rateability there with the horse, so that if it comes on race day, he's able to handle that. Let's transition over to the 6th horse here, Nautical Star. Your other horse that you're interested in here, one that's coming from Oaklawn. So a little bit different here. 2 races at Oaklawn, 2 sprints to a route again. What did you see in Nautical Star that made you think, okay, we got to get this horse here. We got to get him in the Florida Derby?
Well, this is kind of funny. Back, I don't know if you probably remember a horse called Summer Bird, who started his career at Oaklawn, and he won at the Belmont and several other grade ones. So, as soon as I saw him run that first race and the way he broke and the way he closed up, he ran 4th, I believe, got beat a couple lengths, but he galloped out huge his first race and actually got really good numbers. He ended up getting a 12 and a 12 on the Ragusan sheets and a 78 Beyer, which, considering how he broke and the way the track was playing that day and everything else, which is a huge number. So I actually fell in love with the horse right there, just because he reminded me of Summer Bird and what he did later on down the line. Not that this horse can be Summer Bird, but sometimes when you're looking at something will click in the past you saw, and you'll see a resemblance in something, and then you start doing a little research, and the more and more you dig into it, the more you like it. So I started digging into him, started digging into the trainer, Canonis. He's a young kid. He's a gallop boy at Oaklawn Park. Is real green as far as training goes. It's a family operation. I've known Louis ridden a couple of grade 1 winners. His dad, the jock for not grade 1, but grade estate winners for us. So there was, when he started running in the second race, he ran exactly like I thought he would. A little tighter, a little fitter, kind of raced him into shape as well. And the interesting part about this horse is, when you watch his race, you think he's stopping in the race. Okay, he's not stopping because of talent in the race. I flew my vet in there, who's vetted probably 15 graded stake horses for me. So we flew him in there from Florida, and the horse actually came out of that race a little shin sore. So the reason he was stopping wasn't because of ability or anything of that nature. It was because his shins were stinging him. So we believe we've got him completely over that, 100%. He wasn't 100% in that race, and we believe we got him 100%. We don't think distance is going to be any problem. He actually worked with Safdie's other horse, West Coast Cowboy, and sat outside of him. In fact, that video's on XBTV if you watch that. I think it'll make your jaw drop. It's just, the horse worked even with him for about till the 16th pole, and our jock just asked him a little bit, and he opened up 10 lengths on the horse in a blink of an eye. So granted, West Coast Cowboy's not the best workhorse in the world. He works similar to going into his race into the Holy Bull, and he ended up running 3rd in the Holy Bull. So the gallop out on Nostalgic or Nautical Star was also incredible. We're very happy with him. He's got the right kind of mind for it. He's a very relaxed horse. He's push button. We should be able to break and sit him wherever we want, whether that's at the head of the second flight or back. It doesn't really matter to me. We just want to break sharp, have the horse be comfortable during the first portion of the race, and then just see how the race unfolds from there.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the shin issue. I had no idea going into this interview that there was that issue there. And you watch the race, breaks out of the 11 post. Looks like he really has to be worked hard to be able to get up and get that win. But then when you compare that to the workout, which you told me to check out when you shot me an email, that workout was explosive once he was asked. I mean, it was just that turn of foot is not something you often see on dirt. That felt more like a turf turn of foot. So it was interesting to see him run there. And again, made me really intrigued here, especially sitting at 30-1. You must not believe either of these horses should be 30-1 in this spot. What do you think is a more realistic odds point for
from a
these two, from your expectation?
betting angle? Look, most people, all they can do is look at the paper, look at the form. That's all any handicapper can do. And I don't blame them. That's probably, if that's all they can see, I don't blame them for putting them at 30-1. And let's be realistic here. Pletcher's horse is a class above every horse in the race. He should be 1-5 in here from a betting aspect. So basically, and the other thing you consider is 9 of the 12 horses in the race are have their first condition allowance race. Okay, so 9 of the 12. Only ones that don't are Forte, Cyclone Mischief, and Fort Bragg. Those are the only 3. So basically, and I can put a hole in my handicapping. I can make a case against Fort Bragg. I can make a case against Cyclone Mischief. Forte
is a little more difficult.
I can't make a case.
Now, with the Forte question, did you ever consider going somewhere else? Because I think that's an interesting part of horse ownership. Is you knew Forte would be waiting here. Did you ever consider going anywhere else with either of these horses to try and dodge the Forte?
With these 2 horses right now is not the Kentucky Derby. Okay, I mean, one of these 2 horses would have to run through the bridle, be head and head with Forte, show something special. Okay, that's not the goal. The goal of entering him in this race is this is basically a $500,000 glorified first condition allowance race, if you want the truth about it, with the exception of the 3 horses I mentioned.
Yep.
So, and with that being said, I can make a case against 2 of them. So let's just give Forte the win here. Let's just give him his $500,000 for winning the race. What's left over is a $500,000 purse, basically, and the other horses run it for second. And if that's the case, you're talking about, I get to do 2 things, really. I get to run in my backyard, which I was going to do anyway. I get to run 2 turns for the first time, which I was going to do anyway. And if you really dig deep in this field, this is not a grade 1 field. It's just not. It's other than 1 or 2. It's barely a graded stakes race with the exception of Forte. So that's the thought process here. If you throw Forte out and you handicap the field, I mean, I believe that Mr. PEEKS would probably be 8-1, and Nautical Star about 6-1. Okay, so that's the realistic expectations and the reason we're running the horse in this race.
I love that viewpoint of it, right? Because I completely agree with you. From outside of Forte, this definitely doesn't come up like a $500,000 race. And so you have the opportunity to be able to go up there, try and grab second, try and grab third. If one of them runs out of their mind, you're able to try and go after that win and go after a large payday. And I love the aspect of doing it in your home park as well. You mentioned, we talked about White Abarrio. He's become a legend down there at Gulfstream Park off of that Florida Derby win and everything that he's able to do in his career. Before we go, Mark, I just want to say thank you to you as well. One thing that we don't talk enough about is horse aftercare. You've been very active on Twitter helping support horses in their second careers. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for what you're doing there.
My brother credit on that, Clint. I mean, he handles all that side of it, and he does, you're right, he does do a good job about it. I get to reap the benefits like this, but he's 100% to credit for doing all that. You know, we believe in taking care of the horse. They've taken care of us and been good to us. So it's a very important thing. Anybody listening out, even if you can donate $5-10 is a good idea to take care of these horses.
One of the things I love seeing on horse racing Twitter, after big scores, a lot of people, after they hit a pick 5, pick 4, pick 6, whatever it is, will donate $50, $100, $5. Like you said, anything helps. It doesn't take that much money. It's not, I don't think people necessarily understand, you know, $1,000 can make a huge difference for some of these horses, and you can take care of $5 at a time. Right.
And the thing is, the people that are actually doing this and taking care of these horses, they're doing it for the love and passion. They make no money on this.
Yep.
They make nothing. They just do it because they want to take care of the horse.
Well, I appreciate what you and your brother are doing in there. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me about your horses you've got here in the Florida Derby, as well as White Abarrio. Mark Cornett, C2 Racing. Make sure you're following him on Twitter. Make sure you're rooting for him on the racetrack. Absolutely class acts. And again, thank you very much for everything you're doing for the sport, and I appreciate you taking the time today.
Sure, Mike. Thank you.
RacingDudes.com is your home for the best free picks for every race, every track across the country. We're ramping up for the 2023 Kentucky Derby, and we want you to join us in the fun. Subscribe to Racing Dudes YouTube channel and click the notification bell so you never miss a single video. Want to make money betting horses? Bet with the Racing Dudes.